Welcome back, everyone. There's way too much empty space in here, so I think we should get rid of some of it. And on the bench here are the tools with which we will accomplish our task. I've got the one-way clutch and bearing housing temporarily bolted together, a couple bolts and nuts just to keep everything located inside. Everything's been pre-greased, pre-lubed, and what we have to do is guide these spring-loaded rollers and cams onto the rear hub of the Ampli-Torque unit. I've got the upper clutch section disconnected from it at the moment because it's going to be easiest to bring the one-way clutch housing to the hub instead of the other way around. And this usually takes a few tries because this hub can only rotate in this direction inside of this one-way clutch, and it's really easy to make these rollers and springs fall out while you're trying to get those pieces together. So might take a few tries. Let's just see what happens. Okay, everybody, wish me luck. One last look inside. Springs, rollers, all in place. So let's get our rotation right. Let's look at it. All right. Yep, we still go that direction. So, all right, we just have to be careful. Trouble with the end of the hub of this torque amplifier housing, it blocks your vision once it starts guiding into this Hyatt bearing at the back. So you can't really see what you're doing in there by the time everything starts engaging. All right, we're on the rollers. All we can do is try to turn it in the right direction and compress the springs that are behind the rollers. That seats them further down the cam ramps. Oh man. Oh, I heard a click that I didn't like. Yep, we've got a roller that's come out. This is tough. We've got a bunch of rollers just came out. Okay, round two. I don't want to have to pack those rollers and springs full of grease because I'm afraid it will inhibit their one-way clutch action, but it's also going to help everything stick together without flying apart. Wonder if I can see past that bearing. Yeah, a little bit. Okay, now we're getting smart. I bent a couple pieces of heavy wire to hook that Hyatt bearing, and luckily there's quite a bit of vertical float in the race, so that keeps that held up out of my way, so I've got a decent gap right there to get in there with the pick and manipulate those rollers and springs and make sure everything stays together. I do learn. It takes me a while and I catch on slower than most, but I can learn. I think we got it. That really helped holding that bearing up. So, get my holding wires out. So much grease on it, stuck to the pliers. All right. Yep. We spin clockwise and we hold them counterclockwise. That is exactly how it's supposed to be. Pretty confident about it too, because with that bearing up out of the way, I was able to see every roller, every spring, every little flat keeper, everything was in place. I know nothing fell out. Okay, that should have been the hard part. What we have to do now is take both of these pieces and bring them over to the transmission and get them installed. So take note of the bearing race right here and the planetary hub surface right there. They will go up against the bearing on the input shaft here and the thrust washer right there. The one-way clutch assembly bolts to that 6-bolt mounting area. outside of the input shaft. And what we have to do is locate these oil troughs here and there straight up at the 12 o'clock position. You want them to catch oil to feed oil into the one-way clutch and the bearing. To put the bolts in, we have this cutout that's been ground right there. That's the only place where you have enough room to line the bolt in and get it started. Then you rotate it around until the next one lines up and repeat the process one at a time all the way around. So for the next 5 minutes, our only mission in life is to not let those pieces slide apart. Okay, I gotta spin it a little bit to get it on the splines. All right, that's where we're hung up. Okay. There we go. Right there, I think we're lined up. Working on the last one. A little bit more. Right there. Okay, all 6 bolts are tight. Quick function check. Clockwise rotation is smooth. Holds in counterclockwise. Liking that. So this is the point where I'm going to try to explain how this system works. And to do that, I've enlisted the help of this prop right here. So this is the sun gear that's inside the clutch pack. All right, look familiar? That's this guy right here. So as we all know, the steel discs in the clutch spline directly onto this portion of the gear right here. And in a planetary gear set, which is what this is known as a sun gear. These 3 are known as planet gears because in a solar system, the planets always orbit around the sun. Make sense? And in this gear set, we've got 2 sun gears. We have this one on the inside. That is hooked to the shaft that goes into the transmission. The outer sun gear, which we'll put on right now, that is hooked to the shaft that is coming in from the engine. So in high range, we've got our clutch that goes in the drum right here. The steel discs hooked to this outer sun gear. The bronze discs hooked to the lugs in that drum. And when we over-center that clutch and apply pressure to all those discs, it locks this outer sun gear to the drum. And because the outer sun gear is locked to the drum, that means these planet gears cannot spin. Okay, what happens is the whole assembly just rotates. See that planet gear? Not turning at all. It's just stationary and orbiting with the drum. And because these planet gears cannot spin, they're basically locked onto that inner sun gear. Like if you just took 3 fingers, locked onto it and decided to turn it, that's what this whole thing is doing. So in high range, clutch engaged, it's a 1-to-1 power ratio, engine to transmission. It's like we don't even have a high-low range unit in it. So in high range, what you see on the shift tower is what you get. 5 forward speeds and just 1 reverse. Same as any other tractor built up to this point. Back in the front now, so clutch is still engaged, we're still in high range, and this whole assembly is just turning along with this outer sun gear, okay? But say we want low range. On the fly, we can grab the lever, disengage that clutch. It breaks the link from this outer sun gear to the drum, and now see what happens? The drum stops spinning because its first reaction is going to want to go opposite direction of this outer sun gear because it's working through these planet gears. But that one-way clutch says, nope, you're not traveling in the opposite direction. I'm going to hold you solid. So that forces those planet gears to start spinning. And the planet gears are not only geared to this outer sun gear, but the inner sun gear as well. Transitioning to up top again, looking at it from this vantage point. So we've got the inner sun gear right here is turning on the larger portions of the 3 planet gears, but the smaller portions of the 3 planet gears are turning the inner sun gear. And it's hard to see from this vantage point, but as I spin this, I'm having to put almost 2 revolutions on this outer sun gear to create 1 revolution on the inner sun gear, and that is planetary gear reduction. That's what's happening right now, and that gives us our low range. It just takes advantage of the fact that the outer sun gear has to make these planet gears go around almost 2 times to get the inner sun gear to go around once. So it essentially cuts the rotational speed in half from here on back, and it's meant to be shifted on the fly. So say you're in high range and that going gets tough, you just grab a hold of that Ampli-Torque lever, pull it back, it unlocks the clutch, and it automatically puts you into low range. You get on the other side of the tough spot and you want full speed again, snap that lever back forward, locks the clutch back up, and you're back full speed, high range, and you didn't even have to stop. Okay, with all that out of the way, we can put the clutch unit on the front. And yes, I got that thrust washer placed in the center, so y'all don't have to worry about me forgetting that. And now we'll see if this still lines in after I've spun this like 20 times. Was all lined up before, but there we are. Clutch in, that's all you got to do. Looks a lot more complicated than what it really is. Looking good in there. Last couple of talking points. These over-center clutches would last forever if you kept them adjusted nice and tight, and the only thing that could ever wear out the planetaries is if you let the compartment run out of oil. But the Achilles heel of the Ampli-Torque is the one-way Sprague clutch. They wore out fast. If you used this thing religiously, you were splitting the tractor to put a new one-way clutch in it at the end of every season, almost like clockwork. The other downside of the one-way clutch is when you're operating in low range, you lost all engine braking. So it works excellent if you are pulling in a forward direction, but if you encountered a downward slope, you might as well be in neutral, because when the wheels start driving through the transmission, they will spin the planetary carrier opposite of the direction that the one-way clutch can hold it. You might as well be in neutral, and you better have good brakes. Otherwise, high range, you still get engine braking because you've locked the whole thing up. You're not relying on that clutch. All that's well and good. And I know it's going to come up, what are the speeds of a 445 tractor? We have high range, here's low range. Speeds 1 through 5 with reverse. We have miles per hour in the first column, kilometers per hour in parentheses. Pause that if you need to. Okay, the last thing we need to do today is get the high-low range lever installed. It goes in the case right here. I've already got the new seal put in. That is a SKF 7443. The production tractors use the same piece. So here's our lever, and it's set up very similar to the production lever. The bends are just a little bit different in it, all right? So the production lever is on the bench right here, and it's just got some more gradual bends and an arc, and there's the handle end. Whereas this one kind of, you can see it's shaped a little differently. Doesn't quite have the same offset. Other than that, they're set up the same way. You have the fork levers on the end, are roll pinned through the shaft. You can see the 2 holes in the production one right there, one right there. That part's pretty much the same. The main difference is you can tell these fork levers are very handmade, and there's some brazing on them. See up between the forks on both of them? That tells a bit of a story. And I'll need to bring this one along to tell this part. So when everything is put together, the system relies on the fit of the fork end being close enough to the size of the peg that's on each end of that collar for both of them to counteract in and out drift of the other one. Okay, that's what locates the whole high-low range lever in the case, so it can't just drift out, drift in. They're supposed to keep everything centered by only being able to fit over the peg ends of that collar. The trouble we have here is they made the fork ends too large, and what they can do when they're put in here vertically, they can actually drift up into the fatter part of that collar a little ways. And what happened was, you can see all of the witness marks on the edge of this one where it took that sharp edge off. This was able to drift up the collar and move the whole lever out to the point that the damage we found on these 3 clutch dogs was from this fork having drifted so far over that it started hitting them while they were spinning around and around. And that's why they added the bronze buildup, the brazing buildup down here. That just put a little bit more tension down on the tops of those pegs, and it is just enough to keep that engagement lever centered. I've already pre-assembled all of this once just to kind of check the fit of everything, and I still don't really like the way it goes together, and I certainly don't want to have any metal on metal contact going on in here from this point forward. It also tells a bit of an evolutionary tale in the way that they noticeably beefed up the production collars in that area. They added a very pronounced step just inboard of each one of those pegs that'll absolutely prevent the production forks from being able to drift side to side whatsoever. And the production versions are pretty solid, really. There's no movement whatsoever. They hold themselves right in position. But I decided I'm going to have to take some steps to try to prevent any future movement of the prototype setup at all. And this was my solution. I turned out a pair of floating thrust collars. They will occupy the space between each fork lever and the case wall. So that effectively cages this lever in and prevents it from being able to drift in or out at all. Plus, it's a really easy add-on that I could do. It's completely reversible. I didn't have to alter any of the prototype pieces, and this will keep everything fixed and centered right where I want it. So the first step in fitting the high-low lever is to install their low-range travel stop pin. You can tell this was just very quickly done. That's a cut-off bolt. They drilled a hole in the side of the case, they threaded it, and they just put this stop peg in. Funny part is, that's also the footprint for the serial number tag. That's why X231's tag has that hole in it. They just drilled right through the tag and everything because that's where that stop peg needed to be. Called her good. Just like with these case bosses, you can tell clearly they were added after the fact. And remember, we've got the archive photo that proves X231 did not start life with this level of Ampli-Torque high-low range setup. So being that we've located this boss off this corner of the bump out right here, we can find the bump out in the archive photo. We have no Ampli-Torque lever in place in this photo because there's where their stop pin would be, right in the middle of that serial tag. And we also had the other lever that came off the top of the dash, all right? Right here. That was gone by the time we got that tractor. The bottom of that lever went into that boss right there. And we've also got this old travel stop because we had some mechanisms here with a rod that came up to a lever here that went into that boss. You can see it just barely beneath the fuel tank. This boss means that there was a vertical shaft that ran right through here at one time. Likely another engagement fork worked off of that. Another interesting thing that was not on this tractor by the time we got it, this lever that comes off the main clutch pivot with a rod that goes forward, looks like it hooks into the engine governor. That would come off right here, go forward. My theory is an early high-low range setup that had an interlock with the clutch. So you would depress the clutch, it would actuate that linkage, it would reduce your engine speed. You would then flip the lever up here, go into low range, release the clutch, it would bring your engine speed back to where you were. That's how you transition between modes. If that's the case, which it's only a theory, I do like this setup a lot better because you don't have to alter RPM, you don't have to depress the clutch, you just snap this one in and out just on the go. Unfortunately, though, all those early details are now lost to history. We will never know for sure what the original setup was in this tractor. And spin test. We're looking at clearance, dogs to forks. I like it. We are good. And we have got no in and out on that lever whatsoever. So the spacer collars are doing their jobs. And now we do an apply and release test, but I have to hold the Ampli-Torque into that one-way clutch because we don't have a front thrust in place yet, so I don't want to pull the thing out. We just want to see how that over center works. Very good. Okay, everybody, that's as far as we go with work on this compartment for today, but we've got 2 levers on it now. That means progress, right? So the next step is going to be difficult. To close in the back wall of the bell housing area here, I have to do a complete rework on the thrust washer setup for the front of this Ampli-Torque, also the back of the cover that goes in that opening right there. The input shaft needs some work that splines into the front of that, and I currently have no plan for any of it. We're just going to have to get into it and see what develops. So I hope to see you all back for that. Thank you again, everyone. We're going to keep busy here.